That's all it took. Turned around, uh-oh.
Okay. Have you all had a chance to listen to the tape, or you might have some questions?
Trying to understand and make the right question. The way human strains seem to communicate with each other. And I was thinking that humans call it destiny, but I feel like it's a natural mechanism, like you told us, that maybe the frequency of the identity genes, and it's a light frequency of 2 identity genes or more, and the other genes have also...
Let me stop you. Why are you concerned with the way humans communicate with each other?
Well, I guess I was trying to see how, I couldn't seem to understand how in detail the next level might be involved in directing.
Well, we don't understand it either. And I think you're getting at something that we couldn't give you an accurate answer to, and it's really of no use to us giving you an accurate answer. You're more concerned with your relationship with the strain that you are servicing by your efforts against your own vehicle problems. And but we're not really concerned with how they communicate with each other, because we can't even figure it out, and it's not worth the energy. I don't mean to cut you off.
The thing that you want to be concerned about mostly is what kind of effect you have with your strength, which I think you know about. So there is definitely a connection there while you're on this trip, when you're doing this task. Last week we were talking about how the lines of the vehicles that we're occupying in the class vary in ages and the lines of vehicles. And somebody exactly mentioned how strains on humans are on different grade levels. And I was wondering if maybe it's part of our task, because we took different levels of age of lines, maybe bring different grade level humans up a notch, and that's maybe why I have like a 3rd grade line of vehicles to help me.
Well, we feel like the difference between the grade level of your vehicle's mind, I'm trying to get all the right words out right, that it's a very small spectrum, really. If you take the spectrum that you'd have to consider from civilized man, that the spectrum that we're dealing with of ages of human vehicles, minds, is a very small spectrum of the difference between you all. So you've got 2 age elements to be considered. You've got the age element of your next level mind. In relationship, you've got, in other words, there's a spectrum difference between age levels of next level minds within this class. Plus, there's an age level difference between the minds of the human vehicles that you are occupying. And now take it, now that I've said that, finish your question.
Well, that was whether or not part of the plan is to bring a grade level up or not. And that's why...
Several grade levels, that's right.
Well, I'll tell you what I think.
I'd like to.
I feel like that each lab that you all were in, you were picked because of the task and your ability to handle the task. And it didn't have anything to do with the age of the room. And I don't think...
Say that again.
Okay, each one of you all works on the lab. Now, if I understand it, you asked if your age of your mind was in relationship to the grades that you would be working on in your task.
Well, I think she was talking about the mind of the vehicle.
Oh, the mind of the vehicle.
Because go ahead with what you're saying about next level.
I think it's part of the question too, because
I don't think the age of the mind has anything to do with your vehicle. I mean, what the age of the mind in the vehicle wouldn't have anything to do with your next level coming into that vehicle. Unless that conflict.
No. In other words, we're not saying that an older next level mind took an older vehicle mind. And in fact, that might have been contrary to in many cases. So, in other words, the assignment didn't have, you weren't assigned because of the age of the mind of the vehicle. But I want you to go on with what you were saying about
well, what I was saying was that if you all are representative of different labs in the next level, which I feel like you are, and I do believe there are more than 35 labs.
Do you think that each one of them are from different?
It's only speculation. I mean, I have no proof that this is what I think, because I don't feel like that they would, just logically speaking, I don't think that they would take very many pieces out of the lab any more than we would. You know, we avoid trying to take too many out of the lab at one time because it makes them short, and I don't think they have an overload anywhere. But if you all were each representing a lab, and when they were ready to pick you or pick individuals to do this task, then they picked you for your ability to do this particular task. In other words, maybe not that you had ever done it before, but because they felt like you were ready to do it. Because a lot of things take into consideration, like were you showing effort in the right direction to, and this particular task would really push you forward to give you strength in your effort. Now you can look at it another way, and if you let the negative side come in and say, well, maybe they gave it to me because I needed strength and I wasn't doing very well. But in my way of thinking, and logically speaking, because I have no proof, but the way I would look at it, I wouldn't give somebody a task like this when I was involved in it if they didn't know what they couldn't do it. You know, that's selfish, I know, because I don't want to be here forever. And I know we have a certain length of time to do the task. And why be slowed down by individuals who wouldn't want to exert the effort to do it? You see what I'm saying? Now, that's just thinking of it in a logical way. You might not understand it, but it's very logical to me. And plus the fact that when we have worked in more advanced labs, and we know how individuals are who work in advanced labs, and it's very difficult to work with individuals who are not capable of doing anything. In other words, there would be too big of a gap. And so therefore, all of this, again, is just logic on my part. So in a sense, the minds that are in your vehicle should be capable of doing this task. And it isn't too young of a mind. In other words, I don't believe that you all stepped off of graduating from one class and just stepped into this task. But yet you're still not old mind. You see what I'm saying? And you all are on different ages. And I think you ought to look at it in a direct way, and not to feel badly about it, because if you have more trouble with your vehicle, then you can't excuse yourself by saying, well, my mind isn't old enough to be able to keep my vehicle under control. But your mind is old enough to keep this vehicle under control. Otherwise, you would not be given this task. But the ability to do a better job depends upon the age of your mind. You know what I'm saying? Like, one individual may have irritation to deal with, and two individuals may have irritation to deal with. One can handle it very well, whereas the other one couldn't.
If what they had to deal with was equal.
Right. Now, the one who could deal with it, it doesn't. It probably means that mind may be a little bit older than the one who doesn't know it. But it doesn't mean that the younger mind couldn't learn how to do it by exerting more effort in that direction. Any weakness that you have that is difficult to control means that you need to really direct a lot of energy in that direction. Of course, you can say, well, my whole task, I have to do that.
Well, you've got to be convinced you can learn. I think what disappointed us, so when some of your classmates threw the towel in on their task, was, and this was one of the few things where Lynx could not step in and say, no, you can't do that. We couldn't be put in such a position. Do you understand what we're saying? And when we tried it, it boomeranged. And but what I'm trying to say is, if you're having difficulty with an area, it's just like going to school, or you're in college and you're trying to get X number of credits to graduate. Well, if you flunk psychology, does that mean you drop out? Or if you flunk psychology twice, is it worth dropping out? Now, to us, doing a task means continuing to work toward completion of the task to the best of your ability. And let's say that the requirement was 3 years of German, and your vehicle had just absolutely no easy handling of a foreign language. But if you approach the task with the proper determination, you wouldn't care if you took German 1 3 times and German 2 4 times, because you were determined to complete the task. You see what we're saying? Where some really got into trouble was as soon as areas began to surface that were difficult for them, they just would let the vehicle's tendency of throwing in the towel on the task, because I don't think I can lick these things. Or they, like some of your classmates, thought that they had failed in certain areas, and then drop out, rather than learning what it took to pass the course. And now, what this adds up to is each area that you think you have made a poor grade in, or you've had to repeat the course in, or repeat it several times, it's merely an opportunity for you to add labor in that area. And your total result of staying with it to the best of your ability until the classwork is over is what we were after at the outset. Can you understand that? It's so foolish to listen to the vehicle. And of course, the one other thing that happened that ruined the relationship of those who were sent to do this task is when they would begin to get so threatened by their own inability to get control of their vehicles that they lost respect for their teachers. And when you lose respect for your teachers, that's just the end of the road. We just can't go beyond that.
Would it be something in the genes of that vehicle that would cause it to take that test?
Certainly, but the ability was there to get beyond it. Not one of them did not have the ability to see that, this is another area of the vehicle trying to prevent me from doing what I've come to do, and of killing it. there was a time, I'm sure, that every one of you were threatened by losing respect for your teachers. At one time or another, from the first day we saw you until now, all of you have had an experience of being threatened with that part of your vehicle. Some maybe more severely than others. But that's just a way that the vehicle could say, I'm tired of this. I don't want to exert this much effort anymore. And so it turns against anything that would maybe allow it to stop working so hard against its tendencies.
I firmly believe that your vehicles will be tested to the nth degree, even until we get out of here. And in other words, as you all, as the impetus builds up, then the test will be toward you.
And rising to the occasion. Your task is rising to the occasion.
Just this waiting can really test you.
Test your teachers.
And then when you get to this time element, like what tried to slip in at Christmas, this time element, that's the test for you. And we say, if you can break, break. But we don't want you to break. What you want to do is not break. You know, be so determined that you're going to complete the task until the very last minute.
There is a certain degree of harm that's done when the next level mind permits the vehicle to remain on that braking line so long that it becomes a disease that's contagious to other students and requires all the attention of teachers going to that individual to try to get them past the point. And they don't really want to get past the point because to get past the point would be to accept a cure. And to accept a cure means getting rid of that thing that is threatening them. And they like hanging on to it because it still gives them a feeling of their option. You know the effort it took for you to dissolve options? Yes. And that was a very, very good stepping stone.
I feel like several individuals in this group now have been dealing with, maybe they stopped dealing with it yesterday, I don't know, but maybe less of this hopeless. We're not getting anywhere. And when is it going to end and all that kind of stuff? Because it's hitting us like baseball bats. And we have no reason to believe that any different. I mean, we know we can't show you any proof other than what we know and what you hopefully have grown to know. And so why would we be doubting? You see what I'm saying? Somebody, and I don't think it's just one or two individuals, quite a few in the group have been doubting. Now, the thing of it is, this last tape, I think it was the last tape that we made where we told you to examine yourself and get rid of the last little muddy water that you have been or work toward it, or examine yourself. Take the responsibility for seeing if what you're doing is right. Examine your conduct. Examine how you handle certain things. And in the process of examining yourself, you might realize that you're hopeless. Or you may think you're hopeless.
And the vehicle might try to play that tape to you.
Right. And if that's the case, then you're doing the right thing, but you're coming up with the wrong answer.
Right. Boomeranging on
Right, because the answer is to face it, not make you appear to be hopeless, where you can't conquer those things.
I can pass German 1.
Okay?
I want to go off the subject just for a second on two things, then we'll go back to your questions. But one is related to what we spoke about for a few minutes last time we met with you, when we talked about aggressiveness. And I think we used Emily as an example when he was sitting down at the musical toy, and Samuel started moving some of the things, which was out of place. Now let's apply that thing to when your check partner's on a task in the lab. Is it ever right for a check partner to, let's say that I'm stirring the cereal, and I turn my back for a second, and my check partner removes the cereal? Is that being check partners? No, that's interfering. That's interfering. You follow what we're saying? You don't, even though you have check partners on a task, the person who is actually doing the task, you have got to be very careful to not throw them off by entering into it. It's the same thing exactly as the musical game. Let's say that if I'm doing the bacon, and someone else, my check partner or someone else comes in and starts daubing it or whatever they do, or whatever their means of getting rid of the grease, while I'm cooking the bacon, even though the person may think they're the check partner. Now, the reason to bring this up is examine in all your check partner roles that you're not taking the task away from the other person. That you're in other words, if I'm doing the bacon and you're watching it, then I'm saying, does this look done? I'm saying to my check partner, is this time to remove it? Is this time to get rid of the grease? But the other one doesn't come in on top of what you're doing and start doing your next step. Now, the reason that's so important is some of you may have thought that it was okay for them to do it, that was what check partners were. And that's not what check partners are. I would, in other words, if T is preparing something in an experiment and I'm checking on it, I don't check her on it by going and taking it over while T is doing something else, unless he asks me, would I stir the so-and-so? Or would I check it so-and-so? But if he doesn't ask me, all I'm doing is observing it. And the only time I would even say anything is that I might say, I'm not sure, but it might be scorching, or it might be getting too. In other words, I want to prevent failure from what he's doing. I can serve in that check partner capacity. I'm just bringing an alert in, but you don't dive into each other's tasks. Okay, so examine that very carefully in check partner relationships. Now, another thing on a completely other subject, and then we'll get on to your questions. Would you be terribly disappointed if the next level opened the door to some labs and asked you to walk into them, and you were once again out of the human environment, and you were working in next level labs, and you did not leave the surface of this globe? Okay, now, important question, because some of you mentally might think that you're just taking to get as far away from this planet as you could get, and that what I want to be is a jet pilot. What I want to be is a flying saucer, whatever, I want to stay in the flying uniform. I want to be in the Air Force. That's what. And in essence, that's what it would be. Do you follow what we're saying? Because T and I know that there is a lot going on that you might walk into when this task is over, and the subject of leaving this garden may not come up for a long, long time. And we don't want you saying, but T and Cody, when we got through with this task, we were going to leave on the flying saucer. Now, the only reason to bring that up is for you, is your concern to get back in the next level and complete this task, or is your concern to be in the Air Force? You see what I'm saying? It's important that you examine that. Okay?
Well, to add to this, let's say, and this again is just talk, okay? If you did work in a lab, it wouldn't be, it would be separate from the human kingdom.
Altogether.
And you wouldn't be confined to this garden. In In other words, there would still be shuttles probably going to the mothership or someplace else. And you would leave only if you had reason to leave. Now this is just something that we have been thinking about if it's possible for it to happen, but we might as well talk about it because we may get a better understanding. In other words, while Doe was talking a moment ago about the bacon, I had this thought that I hadn't had before about what our purpose is here, and not purpose another purpose other than what you all have to do. But I had in me, my mind has such a strong desire to mold you all to be exactly the way my mind thinks you ought to be, with the knowledge and experience that my mind has.
That's the reason you got the tasks here.
Okay? Now, I don't understand why I have it. Now, I know you have your tasks to do. And I know you have, your task for your strain, and I know you have the task of getting your vehicle into shape. But I also have a strong desire to mold you into something that you are not right now. Now, I could never figure out why this desire is so strong in me. And then this thought came into my mind that while Doe was talking, when he started talking about opening the door and let you into a lab, it's almost like a task, like a task force that the next level has created in order to accomplish what they need to accomplish on this garden. And it's like we're in the preliminary stages of it, and that it's going to take many, many years, Earth years, as we told you, to bring this garden up to even where we can see any fruit of our work. Now, this task force takes an awful lot of strength and a united force to get it going. It's like all of us are pushing on this big ball that we all have to push together to get it going. If one or two fall behind, we don't have enough strength to get it going, unless the ones who are pushing the ball develop the strength to take care of the ones who have dropped behind. You follow that? So in a sense, we all have to get our strength together to get this going, and with the possibility that what our task would be to see this new stage for the human kingdom all the way through to the end. You follow that?
Now, he's not saying on this.
Not in this garden. I'm talking about from the next level.
Not using human vehicles.
No, I'm talking about what we're trying to get the humans to do. This is kind of like it's our baby. It's our child that we are raising. Ours. All of us. Not just ours. In other words, it's a big responsibility, but it isn't impossible because it's not force.
You know, can I interrupt you? Sometimes you know how in old Frankenstein movies you see electrical lightning short. Sometimes when I see you all and I see humans out there, and I'm not just me, but T and I, we can see examples of humans that you are on, that your vehicles are on the same frequency with. And we see it by mannerisms, tone of voice, even the way they think. Now, what we want is a bigger frequency connection with your teachers. We want what's bigger, lower gauge or higher gauge wires?
Lower gauge.
Lower gauge? Okay, we want you to have a 16 gauge connection with your strain of humans that are connected with your vehicles, and an 8 gauge connection with your teachers. I'm serious. Now, we're very thrown when you don't think like we're thinking. And yet we still see you thinking like your vehicles in relationship to the vehicles they're connected with. And which means the vehicles are thinking. You see what we're saying? The vehicle is still having too much to say in the way you're thinking. In other words, that frequency of the strain that you're connected with. We want you to have two bands going at once. And we want the strongest band, the band that you're listening to, and the band that you're receiving more from. And let this second band out here, talking like radio band, let the second band, which is your transmission and reception from your strain, be the weaker connection. Because we really, we're thrown when you come back with things innocently. And we wonder why we, without even thinking about it, have the same judgment on things and see that your judgment is different. And but we know that if you would push harder and listen more to your next level mind, that you would have the same judgment that we have on those things. That it doesn't have anything to do with the age of your vehicle or the age of your next level mind. It's just you're still too in tune with the vehicle. You're still too influenced by the thinking of the vehicle and the strain connected to it. Now we can understand the influence, but you've got to override it.
What you want to do is learn how to be separate from your vehicle. In other words, you've got to be aware that your vehicle feelings are such and such, and your next level mind has these feelings. And you don't want to let those vehicle feelings go into your next level mind and vice versa. And as soon as you realize that the vibration of that vehicle is the vehicle, then the mind cannot be affected by it, and it's just like a finger throbbing, and you can see it throb, you can feel it throb, but you're not going to let it affect your mind.
This is what I was talking to you in the middle of the night about this, because let me tell you a good analogy on this. You know how let's use a telescope that's pulled back this way to focus things. If you would keep your consciousness at the next level position on that telescope, now that means back at the eyepiece, and the brain of the vehicle is out here at the front lid. But if you keep your consciousness out here at the brain of the vehicle, you think you are the brain. You're wondering where is the mixture? Which is the vehicle, which is the brain, which is me. But if you would keep your consciousness, meaning your next level mind, and your consciousness, in other words, move the consciousness out of the brain, move it to the eyepiece on that telescope. It's just like if you look in the mirror, you actually should not come into focus. You actually should not come into focus, or you're coming in only enough focus that you've got things on straight. But if you come into focus enough to tune into what the brain would register it sees in the mirror, what the vehicle's brain would register, you're out here at the lens. You're not at the eyepiece. Now, when you stay at the eyepiece, you can control the vehicle better. You can, because you're separate from it. In other words, sometimes when we say get more mind into the vehicle, you've almost got it in the wrong place. You've almost got it so mixed in the focus of where you think your consciousness actually exists. Now, I'm not talking philosophical terms. I'm talking about if you ever sit and think about when you meditate, think about where is, like when I'm thinking about something, where is that actually located? Where is that actually located? Physically, where is that located, this thinking that I'm doing? And then pull yourself away from that and keep your consciousness back at the eyepiece. And know that from the eyepiece, the things that come into focus are objective, clinical, next level. But if you move into the lens up at the front, you will see things from the point of view of the vehicle. And the two don't jive. The two don't mix. They are not the same. Can you follow that? It's really important that you do that because I know that in controlling this vehicle, that I have even practiced at times thinking that I was over there, looking at this vehicle, telling this vehicle what to do. When, in other words, if I was having difficulty with certain things of this vehicle, I would even, in my thinking, I would get out of it. Because once I got out of it and told it from what it's like, another illustration is if you've ever handled a horse, when you grab him right here at the mouth, you have no control. He doesn't know what you're doing. He's totally confused. It's only when you get that rein away from his mouth and hold it, and you can pull it then and do what you want to with it, because there's some distance there and he can relate to that and he's under control. But when you've got it right here, you're part of the horse's mouth. And that's where you are sometimes in your thinking. You're keeping your consciousness right down in the vehicle's brain. Now, the reason we're saying this is we don't want you to confuse the issues of get more next level mind in. You've got to get more next level mind in, but that means to us getting a better focus on that telescope, so that you can do the task of occupying a human vehicle and make it function and keep it healthy and not listen to negativity and know its arguments and know what the rebuttals are and know how to shut them off and all that. That's getting next level minded. Being keen to the learning areas that you have not yet realized are games that your vehicle play. That's getting more next level minded. Learning to not trust your vehicle at all. That's getting more next level mind. Learning to trust only the way of the next level mind. Now, can you all understand that? You've got to try to separate it a little bit. Now, I don't mean we're advocating that you project your mind someplace else, or you try to do out-of-body experiences. We're not talking about that at all. We're just saying, get your consciousness at the eyepiece so that you can have the focus from the next level point of view.
Is what you're saying, if I'm understanding correctly, the difference is instead of get more mind involved with your vehicles, get more mind in control of your vehicle.
Yes.
I've got a grip on it.
Because that's what gives you strength, and this is what we need. In other words, if our task is to, if this is a task force, to get this garden going in the right direction. And if it's our baby, then we've got to get more mind strength. And it's going in the vehicles that you have. If you think you have a very difficult vehicle, then count your blessings. Because if you get that under control, that vehicle under control, then you will have a lot of strength, and you can.
Your credits are building.
Right.
That's the only way I can think about it. Your credits are building because the more difficult it is, and the more points you make in controlling those difficulties, the more credits you're building. The more courses you pass, the more you will be prepared for it as a result.
I guess, Robert, it seems like the wisdom in us gaining more control over our talking, because it's like a vehicle would have a tendency to say things sort of nonchalantly or something, and that's like reprogramming the vehicle's thinking, where it would be more wise to with restraint think before you say something. I'm thinking of the sorts of noise in the craft, and a lot of it's talking, and how we're probably working against ourselves in other ways than I realized before. Because I just waited and to make sure that what I would say would be something that things would have to say. Or
if you're working on something and you say, now we'll take this and move it over here, and you pour this in here, and I'll do this, and I'll take this over here, and all that is just noise. And you're wasting your energy.
It's just human.
Very human. Now, there's a characteristic that just about every one of you has that I wish you all would work on to get rid of it. And that is, you come into this craft, and any craft you have, and it's like a human coming into their home. Now, you all probably can't see it, but when I go into my craft, I never think of it as being my home. It could be different tomorrow. In other words, it's a place that I'm going to and stay right today. And that's how I feel about it. And if tomorrow it's a different place, then it will be a different place. But I never get into the feel of it being my home, a familiarity about it.
Give them some more symptoms.
Okay. Well, most of it is just walking in. Just walking in and going. Think about yourself now. When you go in, come into your house. Let's take some of these who have an uncracked tail. And you come in, and what do you do? First, you head over to put your $2 up in your ID, right? And then you put your paper bag up from your lunch, and you might put your coat someplace. But there's nothing wrong with doing it. But it's how you do it. It's well, I don't know if I can explain it.
Well, it's what you're vibrating.
It's what you're vibrating, I guess.
It's some of you still let your vehicles even treat the humans that you have to deal with as your autocraft tasks with more respect than you do, and you treat the business place, that's building of your autocraft task, with more respect than you do the individuals in this craft and this building. And it's not conscious, and you think, well, I'm supposed to treat my employer and those people with a distance, and that's true. You are. You're also supposed to treat your classmates with a distance. Distance meaning not familiarity, not feeling like not taking them for granted, not In other words, your respect for them should not compare to the respect that you would have for humans.
And sometimes,
You still look at their faults. You still look at your classmates' faults as you address them or as you see them. Many of you. You don't look at the next level mind with a great deal of respect. You look at the house they're occupying instead of what's inside.
Now, some of you come in, I've noticed, I watched this because this is something that is very obvious to me. But I have seen some of you come in and you didn't appear to be a human coming into the crash. You actually handled it as a member of the next level were doing. Now, I can't explain anymore how to do it, but I think if you think about not doing it, then when you come in, you will do it the human way that vehicle, that characteristic of that vehicle. So what I'm trying to do is make you conscious of it, so that you will, when you walk in the door, you will be conscious of appearing as a member of the next level and not just coming in without thinking and doing it automatically. It's the automatic actions that are really uncomfortable for this vehicle.
You know, when you're, let's say you're working in a hospital and you're a nurse or you're less than that, you're an orderly or you're a volunteer or something, and you happen to be working in OR, or you've been related to it, or let's say there's some very serious surgery going on, life and death surgery. You treat that circumstance with a great deal of respect. Now, T and I actually feel, and we don't have to try, when we go into our craft, we feel like our craft is a lab. We feel like we have respect for it, that it is not a house, it is not our home. I'm using those terms of what humans would use. It's a place that the vibrations that are set up there don't resemble any vibrations that would be set up out in the world anywhere. And therefore, we have a real shelter. It's a very elevating shelter there. And this should be that for you, an elevating shelter. But it also should be a place where anything that's important that happens here. This is the OR. This is life or death. This is where things that are significant happen. That doesn't mean the things that you, decisions that you do in exercising your next level practices on your autocraft tasks aren't significant. They are. But this is a special place. I'm not trying to make a comparison here with what this is going to feel like in comparison to when you step into another lab, or when you step in and this vehicle is no longer a part of you, and the whole lab circumstances, next level circumstances, the tools and everything would be different. There's no comparison there, but mentally you all need to make this adjustment that he was talking about, because it's such a good feeling from a next level point of view. It's such a healthy feeling when you really have that respect for it and the individuals there and what is going on there. It's very difficult to let the vehicle get away with ugly ways, lower ways.
It's what you think in your mind. Like the other day, an incident occurred in the crash where somebody was reading something outside the PC, if I remember correctly, and they coughed or cleared their throat or something. And an individual in the B said, I'm hurrying as fast as I can. Now, that is is a characteristic that is beneath you. Those kind of thoughts. When we have 5.5 VCs in this place, why would somebody stand outside one VC and ask you to make noises so you can hurry up and hurry somebody up?
Or why would you think that that's what they were doing? If you heard a noise, why would you
These
think that?
are the kind of thoughts that you want to rise up. You can have thoughts. I'm just using that as an example. You don't know what goes on in somebody's mind. You might, let's use another thought. You might be turned on by a vehicle in the crash. And anything that vehicle says, you think is just really neat.
Your vehicle does.
Your vehicle, right? And every time they say something, you laugh or just a human
We still
characteristic.
see that happening.
Now, if this vehicle had ever been turned on by somebody in a circumstance like this, it would never, ever let it register in its mind.
If anything, it would go the other way.
That's right.
In other words, if Fred Sody's vehicle was anyway turned on by Alex Sody, when Alex Sody would laugh, Fred Sody would be so on guard that she would be the last to laugh at Alex Sody's joke. Not putting him down. You see what we're saying? But we still see, as we come in and out, we still see your vehicle, you letting your vehicle get away with a certain kind of conduct toward other vehicles and a different kind of conduct.
Getting together, two people getting together to talk about somebody else's conduct, when your conduct isn't any better at the moment, right? So this goes back to the tape we had last time, where you examine yourself and see what you can do to correct it.
Learn if your vehicle brightens up when a certain other vehicle approaches it, and if it really likes to listen to it, and check it out and see why.
And if that's the case, if you do, then you're looking at that vehicle through your vehicle.
That's right. You're not at the eyepiece.
And you're really putting that person there.
That's right. You're
Because
putting them down.
you're sending a vibration out to that individual that makes that individual have trouble. Because it's directed, you might as well send the witchcraft thought to them. But if you block it, then of course you're preventing that from happening.
And this happens in negative responses to vehicles as well as positive.
These are the things we're talking about, okay? Now, I'm sure there are a lot of other things. So, Roddy,
I wanted to, I know this vehicle has dealt with noise, things overly sensitive to noise and talking, certain kinds of noise, high-pitched noise. And I know that when we had in the craft time when there was no talking or processing before, what a good feeling there was, effort put out. And we had no talking. Since that time, music was added. It seems like the vehicle will often try to tell me it was so much better before we had all this because I haven't learned how to handle it. And I'd like to know how to better handle the use of music in the right way and talking in the right way. I know I'm still dealing with that. I don't know. Well, first thing like music is going on, a good portion of the time, something is going on. People talking over it or listening, for hours with the birds. Yes. And there's not a place to be quiet. That's the way this vehicle looks at it. And I doubt that anybody else feels that way. I just think it's something I deal with. And I'm trying to get on top of it.
I don't know if it's your vehicle as much as your mind.
Well, it's your being disturbed by it.
Right. But concern for wanting it to be quiet. First, we've never lifted the instruction to whisper, to talk about the whisper. I don't know if you all know that. Now, we talk about it in a whisper because when we usually talk, we know that a lot of people are going to want to hear what we say. You know, but in a sense, whispering is what you all should be doing. And if you go above a whisper, then we all know that. Now, the only time you would go above a whisper would be when if there happened to have a fire break out and the fire alarm doesn't go off or something like that. But,
Safety.
right, for safety. Or if we have an intruder and we want to get everybody out of the way, you still wouldn't do it real loud where they could hear, but in general, whispering is still in effect. Now, with the Plato, if you're going to go to the extreme, like we did for the reading, when we didn't have any control on the reading, if you're going to the extreme of whispering with Plato, then we're going to have to stop that. You see what I'm saying? Do you all agree that it's too much whispering?
Certain heads.
I hear Plato more. He seems to want to talk. I don't hear others that much. He just constantly picks up and starts whistling. And nothing. That links tapes or anything comes up.
Well, we're not talking about his whispering. We're talking about
The music should be pleasant, soft music. It shouldn't be loud. And in a sense, the mind, the music we think, the music that links thought for you, we think, should be pleasant to the mind, unless it's too loud or something like that. But talking, I think talking is the most annoying, and that's not the good word, most thing that works against your next level mind.
We can turn on nice music, and there's a certain point to where it begins to get on our nerves, and we'll have to reduce it, or we have to turn it off. And if it threatens anybody's nerves, it's too loud. That's the truth. Now, unless you're going to say, well, it threatens my nerves if it's on at all, that's a little bit extreme. But if it's loud enough to make you nervous or give you the jitters, then we have to turn it down. And I have heard it too loud. We've come into your craft when it was too loud. And you can't think like a human. Well, if I don't have it turned up that loud, I can't hear the full spectrum of the frequencies. We couldn't care less. You hear half of the spectrum of the frequencies. We getting it way down to where it's pleasant but not offensive. And if it's at a proper volume in here and you go in the quiet room, it should sound distant when you're in the quiet room. It should sound distant enough that certainly it wouldn't be offensive to you in the quiet room. Do you follow that? Any what you want to say?
I'm not sure, but it's such a simple piece to know how much music there is without it. I don't know if maybe I'm just not hearing it, but today, that's the first time I've been able to grasp it. I've heard it on. It may be that because I have craft that appears, but today, this time,
Well, I don't know that they were talking about since being in this craft in particular, but
Well, everybody knows what you want to say, Nora does. And I have my kind of thing. In fact, I know, there's no doubt about it, that I have let my vehicle get a little irritable in the last few days because of what she was talking about. And yes, and I could be like it way wrong. I know that the vehicle is disturbed. There's no doubt
you're
about
talking
it.
about talking or you're talking about...
I find that I get difficult listening to the link tapes when they're on because that's the whistling or electronic games or, and I'm sure that my brain's not going to be clear enough to say right now.
Well, now, first of all, let's stop there, then you bring up some more, or somebody else can if you don't want to. But if you're listening to link tapes and Plato begins to act up, I'd throw a cover over his case.
But you're not Plato.
Or any of the other birds.
Wait a minute.
like
If
birds.
individuals and very quickly, over
To the bird.
and over.
But link tape is playing?
It is.
Well, that's more, that's,
That's very,
why did they listen to the tape? It's probably doing a lot of good.
in the same room that Link State
I know it's what they're doing.
And like I said, I know that I wouldn't be able to get out of control. And I know
well,
that.
we're making a point that that is totally inappropriate.
We could care less if Tato performed, okay?
And it sounds a little too important to individuals that the birds perform if they're going to make noises to the birds at the same time that the Link State is playing. That's really out of place.
Now,
Don't even know about it.
now, it's,
Didn't hear about that.
it's the information on the tape, okay? It isn't that Link is talking and you all have to stop, like, what is it?
Good stuff.
The husband, you say husband or what
Oh,
it is.
yeah.
Yes, whenever he talks, everybody stops and listens. It isn't that, but if you're playing the tape, why not benefit from the tape?
We don't want the tapes played if they aren't being listened to. I mean, to me, they're better not heard than for you to try to mix listening to them in with all this other confusion. We'd rather when you listen to them that you listen to them. Or now, and if some want to listen to them, then those who don't want to listen to them ought to get out of their way. Or do whatever you have to do someplace else, or do it in silence. But you can't have them listening to a tape while you whistle at a bird, or while you do an electronic game that's making a noise. That's just inconsiderate. It just doesn't work.
Anything else, David?
Well, I think that I've been dealing with this for a little while, and I guess, and like I said, I admit I let it go to the vehicle, which it shouldn't have, but I guess I'm feeling like there's a difference in respect, which I'm sure that can't be true because we're next level minds, but that's the feeling that I've allowed the vehicle to come in.
You don't let it.
No, it's just not thinking about it. It's just not having thought it out properly.
Don't let that come
Because
in.
that puts them down.
Yeah, like the vehicle
Right.
is trying to do that.
Or take it on a personal level.
Right.
You don't-
Give it to us, we'll put them down.
But I wanted to clarify something. I enjoy the consistent. And if it's been mostly the confusion of maybe wanting to listen to a tape and not really being able to
A meeting tape?
listen to a meeting tape on what is playing without the cross noises.
Okay, now, I tell you what, when music is playing, we don't think the cross noises should matter.
Right, that doesn't bother me.
Because it's something wrong if you want everything silent while you listen to music. That's human too. But we're hoping that you have found significant reason to replay meeting tapes, and that when you listen to them, that they should get the attention of those who want to listen to them, and you don't want to interfere with those who are trying to listen to them by causing other noises in the ear. Now, if you got to run the beater in the lab, you can't do otherwise. You got to run the beater in the lab because it's a scheduled procedure that has to go on at that given time.
But if people are talking in the lab and the volume is so loud, that again is what should disturb you is the fact that individuals are breaking the procedure. And in other words, whispering is what should be happening. And not
Let's underline that on this tape, underline. Going back to whispering.
going back. We've never been on it.
Well, I'm afraid we've slipped off of it, right? Haven't we slipped off of it?
Yeah,
I have a question about what you brought up earlier regarding your system. I know that frequently when I get off with my Outcraft task, I'm anxious to get home
Nothing wrong with that.
because I'm
Anxious to get back.
Right.
Okay, we stay home sometime, but
okay. I just want to be sure that I'm thinking.
No, there's nothing wrong with that.
Okay, because in my mind, home is where the waves of the next level are, and right now this is the most immediate place I can find those waves.
Okay, but when you come in,
Right, I don't throw.
how do you feel when you walk in? Oh, I feel relieved to be back. But how do you think of the craft as you come in?
Make sure I'm straightened up when I get
That's right.
Right, and this is not a place to come in and dump your things down and start criticizing and telling all the awful things that happened during the day, or letting your hair down, start being familiar with folks around you, all that kind of thing.
What if they bring in the garbage can and out at the street for 2 days? Believe it or not, it may not be that particular thing, but an irritating thing could hit you as you come in. Like, for instance, if you come in and you hear somebody whistling with Plato, oh my gosh, here we go again on that. Or the music is playing too loud, or you hear loud talking in the lab or something. If you come in with irritation hitting you, or you vibrating irritation because of what's happening, then you're in the wrong place.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
It's clear on the volume level for like the link tapes are playing. If they are working in the lab, I know there's been times when I know I've stood beyond saying no whisper, but I've had to really raise my voice just because my check partner's a few feet away because the volume of link tapes, like link tapes get set up to such a volume so that everybody can hear what's going on, even though everything else is going on.
You can't expect to work in the lab and get every word with some of the noises that the lab is going to require, even though you're trying to be as quiet in the lab as you can. So we don't want the volume level set to accommodate the noise of the lab. The volume level needs to be set to be as soft as it can be, and everyone be able to hear
Well,
it.
like, let's say you're in the workroom, there's people maybe sewing, there's several divisions sewing machines going, there's 2 or 3 individuals working on computers. If you're trying to listen to links tapes, to me that isn't the place to listen to a tape because there's other things going on, but yet the volume there is set to the main control so that you can hear everything that's being said. And I think maybe that's when the roadie's feeling, because I feel it too. It's like I'm getting it from all sides, and there's no place in the craft where I can sit and be quiet. Not even quiet it's coming through.
Well, we've got to make some adjustments here, because if we're setting links tapes volume to have to go over any other noises that might be happening at the time, then we're going to have to say that. Go ahead.
The only thing I can think of is that they turn off the speakers and they'd have this room or whatever room. Lab isn't a good place to have speakers going. And if that's going to be a workroom, that isn't either, because in a sense, if you are thinking that you're gaining anything by having tapes going in there, and yet you're making so much noise you can't hear, your subconscious mind can absorb a lot, but I don't think it can absorb that under those circumstances.
Why don't we, when we have meeting tapes, if you want to limit them to this room?
I think so. It'd be better, and if no one's in here, don't play them. Because I think you're psychologically being confused because you think that you're listening because you've been sitting in the workroom working all day.
How about that?
And you really haven't been listening to the tape. All you've done is been hearing the noise behind it. And that's another thing. When you tune that, don't tune it where it don't sound like you've been taking hormones.
The voice level the other day sounded like all the clothes were taken down. It really was sickening.
So, adjust the tone where it sounds a little bit.
I told you that if I had my way, I'd march all the minerals down to castration. It sounded like it had already occurred.
Okay, so SAT 3, that would have, I don't know about SAT 3 because if they get in there and they're playing tape and they're doing notes or something, they're not listening to the tape. In other words, I think we thought at first we could play it and you could listen, but you can't because we're causing problems. And you're not getting the benefit of the tape.
So let's try it. Just confining link tape listening to this room.
I know it has helped me though when I've worked in the lab. then I'll hear just the phrase that pops in that, oh, I didn't understand it that way before. That opens up a different. And I'll go on thinking about that, and I can't hear the tape for another 5 minutes or more. And it has helped me, but it's just sometimes it's just the amount of noise through the speakers.
See, when you're on lab duty, you should be concentrating on doing your labs because we want you to be able to do it as a member of the next level and not as a human. And you really need to be concentrated on that. So I don't think that you would lose out because if you're in the lab and you're not doing anything and the tape is going, you can just walk over to that consuming area and listen. But the other day we came in and no one was in here listening to the tape. And it was just going up to door. And I thought, well, why is it on? Because there were some in the lab working on something, but I didn't see anybody else.
So music can stay on in the other rooms, but
It's not
you're on it. Can we handle our speakers that big?
And we'll see if that works, okay? If you get your volume down to a whisper, and of course there's no way you can keep the boom machine any quieter than it is, or the computers any quieter. Do they make a lot of noise?
Well, it's not a lot of noise, but by the time 2 or 3 of them are on, and you just can't keep raising it. And believe it or not, they do make a lot of noise. It's not obvious loud noise, but it's low-pitched noise that can drive you crazy if you try to listen to things above it all the time.
We'll leave it like that for right now, okay?
I think so.
Okay.
Speakers there. I guess a lot of us just might have to talk to anybody about it, but I think because the power of that machine, it drives the big speakers. It takes more wattage, more volume to keep these speakers at a certain volume. If these at a certain volume, it's always louder than
Well, I thought we were going to, when we get our speaker set up, we're going to have control, aren't we? Just like we did at the other place. We have worked on that. We're going to work on it today after this meeting. That's true.
Okay.
Good.
Partially this relates to what you mentioned earlier, and part of it is what you spoke about before, that the vehicle, the experience that they had, the preparation they had even in the world, have been very valuable to what you need to do as your task. And we know that these vehicles are going to become some of the strange characteristics that we have. And maybe if we were all in different labs in the next level, like maybe some, for example, related to animal life, plant life, or whatever, is there any likelihood that different vehicles might also have been selected in terms of any abilities or experiences they might have in this physical world?
I don't think so.
In terms of tests?
No, even though your next level mind might have moved over into the vehicle enough to have subconsciously prepared it, had a little bit more interest in that area. Like, let's say that he's being more with creative processes of vehicles, how they are improved and developed, caused he to end up with that vehicle going into nursery and spending time as a nurse dealing primarily with infants and how that creation process works. In that same way, there's a possibility that if your mind was in a certain lab, that the subconscious influence of that mind might have made that vehicle have some interest in those areas.
I'm afraid, and I'm not trying to put anybody down in the class, that's because I'm putting all of us down, not just you all. But I don't believe that any of our vehicles would have made a big mark in the world. In other words, I'm sure that the minds were picked because, the minds picked the vehicle in order to accomplish that particular task that the vehicle had characteristics of. That makes sense. And I don't think it would take somebody who has already made, who had a prospect of accomplishing very much in the world, because that's in a plan also, so to speak. In other words, we kind of got into vehicles that were very insignificant to the world. But do you agree?
Well, something else on that same thing. I think if your vehicle had a certain amount of tendencies of push and drive towards so-called success or prominence in areas, that it was given to you as an area to work against and strain. In other words, because it's definitely an interference with your task, just like other areas of human vehicular tendency. And I'm sure that some probably had the task of putting that more into proper perspective, because it's that ego push, even though it might be unconscious, but for someone to be considerably prominent in an area, they have to have an awful a feeling of insecurity or a desire for spotlight. You know, they have to have one or the other, and both are usually the same. You know, it's usually promoted by insecurity, that drive to prove, I've got to prove. And so if some of your vehicles had those characteristics, then it was in order to influence the strain and get that more in balance. And what the work that you had to do, let's say that it's hard for you to, that your brain still comes and attacks you in that area. Oh, I can, let's say when you're dealing with doubt and you saying, goodness, I've spent these years in this class, and what I was destined to do was be a prominent so-and-so, you know, and you could even let guilt come in, the vehicular type guilt. And the way you would handle that and get it in control and realize that you're doing a far more significant task than any prominent position that can be held. I mean, if you were president of the United Nations of the world, it wouldn't be as significant as what the least of you is doing. It couldn't even begin to compare. And for you to recognize that, or certain things could cause you to have to recognize that. This is why when you say that you get a little interested in your autocraft task, you think, you know, you've got to keep it in proper perspective, because any task that you would do that is participating with a human task, you've got to keep it in perspective and realize how primitive it is, how elementary it is compared to the kind of task that you are assigned right now.
Well, it would just be more difficult if we had some prominent vehicle, you know, or one that was destined
But what I was
to
saying
be
is,
president of the United States.
most of the ones who feel destined to do that is because of their feeling of inadequacy. That's what pushes that.
But I don't think that's true. I don't believe that any vehicle sitting here today was destined.
No, we didn't. That's right. We didn't take any of you off of any significant course. That actually, the funny thing is, we feel like that some lab is actually manipulating, not manipulating to the point of taking the humans off the course that they are supposed to be on, or not influencing them in a way that changes their options. But we feel like certain labs control these little heads of nations and so forth in order to see that the planet's growing in a certain way, and that certain lessons are learned.
Stars.
When you're talking about, maybe the utility, I don't know, it's basically like do a review of past lessons, like we got a pretty strong lesson on not initiating. What do you think about that? Not offering your opinion before you give what your checks are going to say. And I realized that I had just fallen right back into just, leading and not even offering that. And then I tried to get back on track. A lot of people that appeared like falling into that
that person comes in and starts interfering with your task by offering their assistance when you did not ask for their help. In other words, if I was baking the bacon and Doe came in and saw that the bacon had not been drained, and he started to do it, he would never start to do it without saying, would you like for me to drain the bacon?
Or more right would be for me to do it if T has said, would you mind?
He wouldn't.
Because if T has started that task, then if it would really be more T's place to ask me if I would pick it up for a moment while she was doing another task. It doesn't hurt for me to, if I see that something needs to be turned, to say, can I assist you this way? Or it might need to be turned. What do you think? Then I'm leaving all the options open. I'm not making them feel like they're negative toward me if they refuse me. You can't put them on the spot. You see what we're saying?
Especially because you don't know what the strategy that individual had in mind to be with draining the bacon.
I don't know if it's in the same situation. But it's stronger to mention it, and that is when you're piloting the co-piloting. I've had co-pilots say, well, you want to go in the left lane now? And it wasn't where we had to turn left, and I felt perfectly comfortable in the lane I was in, but I didn't.
Well, but if they said that, I'd want to know why. If I were your position, I would want to know what their reasoning was, and I would ask them. And if they had good reasoning, then I'd thank them.
Right.
If they didn't, it should be included in them. Well, I think I talked out of turn, because why would they bring it up if it wasn't good reason?
But it's the question of like either way, that both might, sacrifice.
We usually listen to questions of either way. Like, let's take the freeway, for example. You're covered up, don't you know it?
Good enough.
Yeah.
As you mentioned,
Yeah.
we can keep our mind off it. Stop it over there.
Okay, let's take freeway driving, for example. There are certain habits that you try to develop if you're on the freeway. And in order to be considerate and in order to not make others do what they shouldn't do. And let's say, like, first of all, you go down the right lane. You don't go in the center lane. But you get in the center lane, you need to pass. Or there's no harm in moving over toward the center lane if it's convenient for you to do it, and there's some coming on from an entry. Now, we try to take all those things into consideration. Now, I don't go over and slow somebody down behind me in order to let somebody come in from a side road. That's not right. That's wrong priority. And I always get back in the right lane as soon as I can get in the right lane and maintain the speed that I would like to maintain. And then I would pass only, would get over the left if I needed to pass, because this lane was going too slow. Or I would also get in the left if the left was clear and somebody needed to come on, just long enough for them to get on. Now, all those things considered, your co-pilot should have figured out that kind of reasoning. Two, and now there's no harm in the co-pilot saying, did you want to do this, or what are you doing now, so that they can understand what you're doing.
If it's a suggestion, or if it's like, saying, do you want to get over?
Give me an example.
Well, like you might say, you want to get over now?
Why?
Well,
no, I can understand if they, but you should know why. Like if they said that because you're in the left lane and now the right lane
usually
is
it's
clear.
because the traffic seems a little slower in the other lane. But then you go down 100 yards down the highway, and then the other lane is slower than the one you just changed out of, and so you end up changing back and forth 2 or 3 times.
Is overstepping himself.
Yeah.
It'd be like me sitting there and telling Doe, you want to move over into that lane over there? It's, why would I tell him what to drive, how to drive? The co-pilot.
Unless I'm really overlooking something.
Or you look like you're supposed to be in the lane because you got to turn this way. I mean,
I think if you're going down into the inside lane and your exit is coming out,
right,
and it's like you're not alert,
Now, even though I said that I was riding the right lane unless I passed, let's say that because because I wouldn't want you to take that and then use it to an extreme. Because if I'm in the left lane and I see that I'm coming up on some slow traffic and there's nobody behind me trying to pass me, then I stay in that left lane till I got around that slower traffic. Do you follow what I'm saying? Did I get? I think I missed. I said if I'm in the left lane, rather than go over to the right lane, which is my comfortable position, if I'm in the left lane and see some slower traffic ahead of me in the right lane, and I also look behind me and see that there is no one trying to get around me, I might stay in the left lane until I get past those slower. But as soon as the road is clear, I'm going to get past the right lane.
But if you're in the right lane and suddenly the cars in the right lane seem to be a little slower and the left is going a little faster.
It depends upon the degree. It depends upon the degree. Yes, I switch over if I'm trying to get somewhere and the right lane is going 40 miles an hour or 45 miles. And a lot of times on Central Expressway, I can't imagine why some of those people go so slow. It's like they're out on just a Sunday cruise or something.
But do you think it's right for the co-pilot to say you can move over to the left-hand lane?
No, it sounds like the co-pilot's too anxious. The co-pilot really would like to be in the driver's position.
Well, they're oversensitive.
Right.
Well, that's what I was just asking to see if the type of thinking you were applying in the lab also applies in
You
this
bet.
situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Where the check partner is entering in too much.
Because also it seems like my responses and my reflexes may not be the same as my co-pilot. And if we're waiting to turn out onto the street and he says go, and yet I didn't see the traffic quite the way
Can't do that.
and I
Can't do
feel like I
He
gotta
can
go.
say it's clear.
I might have gone, but I certainly don't expect T to go if T's not comfortable going. I wouldn't want T to go if T wasn't comfortable moving out. That's asking for trouble. I don't expect someone else to drive like I drive. And I hope that doesn't mean that I'm a bad driver or that I'm a good driver. It doesn't mean either. It just means that two people can be good drivers and still their judgment of when it's safe to move out and when to move this way and that can differ.
You can say it's clear over here, and if they choose to move, like it's clear this way.
I'll tell T that or something, but I even have more reason to tell T that because of limited vision, but I'll say, well, this lane's clear if you want to move over, but I'm not saying move over to the right,
Looks to me like the co-pilot again.
Over step. It's just like entering into your left hand.
It gets to be like the driver's more than the co-pilot. Things the way we have to talk. The lady.
I've been wondering about the topic of walking. A couple months ago, I heard Keith said, he talked about neural practice at the time most recently. He said that you always are longing to get back to that level very, very much, and that all of us should. And then that was carried on into the next level. We should be more, like we had more awareness now of constantly the way we were all the time. And I guess I've been worrying about this whole time because I feel guilty because I don't really feel a longing to go back to the next level. It's not that I like it here, it's that I don't know if it's because you have an awareness of what's there that we aren't capable of having or what. It's just like I don't really, I guess I can think about the task. Like some tasks, you're putting tasks, and like if I knew I had a task and they were waiting for me to get back and do, that would bother me. I don't know though.
Well, I tell you this, the older your next level mind gets, the more uncomfortable it is in an environment that is as distant from it as this one. And the longing, I suppose, the older a next level mind is, the stronger the longing would be. Because even the most pleasant circumstances in the human kingdom are very unpleasant to us. Even to have to exist in them for a while, it's still, we have to pretend to be pleasant. I mean, comfortable, not pleasant, comfortable. And therefore the longing is very strong, because and the longing can also translate, like if you're not seeing a lot of progress being made at a fairly rapid pace, then you feel like you're marking time, and that brings that longing back in, because you don't want to mark time. Now, we don't mind. The longing is not very conscious when we see a lot of progress being made, when we see lessons being given and lessons being learned. But when we see periods of when lessons are being given and lessons not learned, when they're not being absorbed, or paces are not being made forward, we can't help but long for the task to end, even though that's another thing that you fight off. You fight off certain things in the vehicles. You have to fight off that, because you have to say, now, wait a minute, I can't let this be an interference with my task. I've got to get back with my eyes on my task. I can't let my homesickness in a different way interfere with it.
I think, if I remember correctly, what I was talking about was we want you to develop a longing, and you may not have it now, but as you get more mind and control of the vehicle, you will automatically develop a longing, because you cannot be satisfied with this level.
And we're not saying that you're satisfied.
No, if you don't have it, then get busy and develop it, which means that it's something to work on. In other words, we don't want you to feel dissatisfied with everything here. That's not the kind
or become critical with
No.
the primitive condition that's natural for its
The plastic disposition is fantastic. An even, consistent disposition is fantastic. But you cannot be satisfied with that condition as they are. This is what I was talking about. In other words, we could have things more pleasant. I mean, we enjoy talking about the next thing. We enjoy bringing your mind out. We have a pleasant craft, and our experiments can be pleasant. We have no reason to be uncomfortable.
No, they aren't really pleasant.
I'm talking about...
I mean, they're pleasant by human standards, but
I'm talking about they're not